Good evening, Helen. I suppose Helen's mother is trying to protect her. This special board meeting, and all this fuss, and about me, Mrs. Orrin, 11th and 12th grades, social studies. I hope it doesn't upset Helen too much.
Well, I never dreamed we'd have anything like this right here in our own school. But then when Helen brought that notebook home, and there it was, written out just as plain, well, I didn't know what to think.
Mrs. Hinkle, the board would like to know just exactly what did happen. Now, if you'll start at the beginning.
Yes. Well, I was never so surprised in my life. Helen was just leaving for school. And if she hadn't been late and in such a hurry, she'd never have forgotten her notebook. And I'd never have suspected that...
Oh, my scarf.
It's on the closet shelf. If you just put your things away.
Oh, that's all right, Mother. I'll be late.
Social Studies, Helen Hinkle, 12B. My, but they do grow up fast. Law, supply and demand. Unions and management. Government ownership and capitalism. Church and state. Systems of government. Monarchy, democracy, communism. Communism. Well, teaching communism in our schools.
But Mrs. Orrin did give you this material.
Yes, but Dad...
Then she is teaching communism.
But it isn't like you make out. We have to know about things.
We'll see about that.
One worldism, government controlism, progressivism, welfare statism. The teaching of these insidious, creeping theories in our schools is undermining free enterprise, weakening the profit motive, making our young people into weak, dependent candidates for total government security handouts. In my work as consultant and investigator to the Free Our Schools movement, I can assure you that these vicious theories are put within the reach of our young children daily. While you and I are busy working to pay our monstrous taxes, our schools are using these very taxes to subvert our children's minds. I'm sure you've all had experiences of this sort. As a matter of fact, just before this meeting, one of your own members showed me proof, indisputable proof, of what I'm saying. Mr. Hinkle, show them what you showed me.
Well, this is my daughter's notebook. You can see for yourself the kind of stuff they're handing out to these kids. Now listen to this. Theory of communism. 1. Dictatorship of the proletariat. 2. Government control of economy. 3. Karl Marx, Lenin, Stalin, and Malenkov.
Why does she have to teach all that controversial stuff? She's just stirring up trouble.
Well, now, Mr. Hinkle, most of our studies are made up of accepted truths and values. But the schools must also give the students an opportunity to study issues such as communism, a respect for facts, a constant search for truth, and a knowledge of the world as it actually is today are most essential in our democratic way of life. I have every confidence in Mrs. Orrin's teaching.
This is a lot of fine talk, but we want to question that teacher. And if you don't have her in here so that we can get at the facts, then we'll take it to the board.
It has been charged, Mrs. Oren, that students in your classes are getting un-American ideas, and that you are responsible. Do you recognize this as the notebook of one of your students?
Yes. It is Helen's notebook.
Do these notes represent what goes on in your classes?
Helen's a good student. Yes, this represents what goes on in my classes.
So you do teach communism?
Mrs. Oren, will you explain?
Well, I teach about communism. I'd rather say that we study about it. I feel an obligation to help my students find out everything which affects their lives. And I think you will all agree that communism has affected each and every one of us. If we don't understand all the facts about communism, how can we know how to fight it?
You do teach communism, then?
Of course I teach about communism. I'm not afraid of the word. And I think you will all agree that it is one of the most disturbing influences in the world today.
Why is it, Mrs. Oren, that these controversial subjects seem to come up in your classes?
If you could all be with me in a 12th grade classroom, try and remember how interesting and new everything is at that age. How exciting every idea, as if no one had ever thought of it but ourselves. There is always a kind of anticipation before class. We have our regular assignment, of course, but you never know how these fresh young minds will grapple with it, get at the meat. Take the situation that came up just last week. There was Howard Lang and Joe Kendricks. They're both smart boys. Howard's father is an accountant for a local company, while Mr. Kendricks is very active in the union there. It was in economics. All right, Joe?
The law of supply and demand means that in a free economy, the supply of goods and the demand for those goods will automatically set the price. But the people who work in factories are selling their work, and sometimes there are more people willing to work than there are jobs. And then if you let wages be set by the law of supply and demand, the workers wouldn't make enough money to live on. That's why they organize.
There we have a typical situation. What would you have a good teacher do? How would you have her use this real interest to help students learn? Howard?
The workers would be better off without a union. Every employer wants his workers to be satisfied. Union bosses just keep things stirred up enough so they can keep their union jobs.
Now I knew that both Howard and Joe were expressing attitudes they learned from their parents. And certainly it's not a teacher's place to say that one is right and the other wrong. But you do want them to learn and to think. This is the purpose of all our teaching. Well, Joe agreed to report on management's viewpoint, and Howard to report on unions. All the rest of the class decided to find out what management and the workers had in common. Information was the first thing the class needed. Some could be gained from books, newspapers, magazines. Joe visited and talked to some of the local factory managers. And Howard visited union headquarters. In the discussion a week later, Joe had a much better understanding of management problems, and Howard had actually talked with a union leader. By gathering and evaluating information, they learned to make sound judgments. I think that every member of the class sees that both labor and management have much to gain under our competitive, free enterprise economy.
Well, I guess you handled that all right.
But it seems to me, Mrs. Orrin, that perhaps you have a particular liking for these, controversial subjects.
It is true that in the social studies, such as history, economics, government, there are many differences of opinion. But most teachers run into the same kinds of problems. Take our biology class, for example.
But what I don't understand is how these animals could have been on Earth millions of years before man, and the Bible says the whole Earth was created in only 6 days.
The students are going to need a lot of facts and do a lot of real thinking. But it seems to me that science and religion, when fully understood, strengthen each other. Or take Mr. Alvin's class in American history.
The states join together voluntarily, and I don't think the federal government has any right to pass laws telling them what to do.
Well, how about flood control and electric power projects? River and electric lines go right across state lines.
Some states have more money than others. I think the federal government should use some of that money in the states that don't have so much. They could use it for schools, or for roads, or public health. Things that would help all the people in the whole country.
Yes, but they always tie strings to money like that. If we use their money, they'll try to tell us how to run our schools and elections.
But it's for the good of all of us. Aren't we all part of the federal government?
Now, these are real issues. The kinds of issues they will soon be called on to help decide. All their school life, they have been learning to study, evaluate, and then take action based upon intelligent decisions. Students must be allowed a chance to study and learn about these issues if our democracy is going to survive.
But Mrs. Orrin, how can we be sure that the teacher's thinking on all these things is right?
Right? What do you mean by right? These are controversial subjects, and the teacher's job is not to decide them. That is a job for all the people. The teacher helps students learn how to think, not what to think about them. There have been times and places where the government thought it knew what was right and told the teacher exactly. There was a time in Germany and in Italy and in Japan and now in Russia, the United States. Somehow I can't fit our country into that pattern. We are a nation of free individuals. We have always had differences. The great issue of slavery, of votes for women, of prohibition, of child labor. These issues have always been freely discussed and debated in America.
This is all very well, Mrs. Orrin, but let's get down to brass tacks. Do you or do you not teach communism in your classes?
I teach about communism. I do not advocate it. I am not afraid of our citizens' decision on communism if all the people could know all the truth about it, the real dangers it presents to our free and democratic way of life.
Let's not quibble. Teach communism, teach about communism. We want to know what you teach, what books you use, how you teach it.
Communism is a fact, a problem in the world today. I know that the subject is going to come up in my classes, and I'm prepared for it.
We ought to stop fooling around with talking diplomacy and show the communists we mean business. I think the United States has got the stuff to do the job alone.
And when it does come up, I usually find the students are full of emotion, fear, anger, bewilderment. To let a debate develop at this point would not help the students learn. They would only be arguing, exchanging ignorances. The first thing we must do is to get all the information. We can begin by finding out something of the Russian people and their history. The poverty and ignorance under the Tsars, which made any change seem one for the better. From current news and magazines, we can follow the words and the activities of the present-day communist government. and see that where hunger, poverty, and ignorance exist, communism can seem a change for the better. We can study the theory of communism and learn how its present masters have used the ingredients of terror and obliterated the most elementary rights of free men. We can use the works of communists themselves, and knowing the source of the material, can see the distortions which the communist can give to the simplest facts. I'll read you a quotation from a communist book. This is what the communists say about our public school system. The whole American school system acts in the spirit of a militaristic program. The syllabuses and textbooks in American schools are imbued with racist ideology and teach hatred to everything outstanding and advanced. The word peace is forbidden in American schools. And finally, we can intelligently compare communism with our own form of government. That's right, Jim. In a democracy, we have freedom of religion. Now, what does communism do about religion?
Communists say religion is the opiate of the people. The government is atheistic, and it does everything it can to discourage people going to church.
Jean?
In a democracy, we have trial by jury. But under communism, the people have no protection against the secret police.
Ruth?
In our country, we have a secret ballot.
Under communism, the voter doesn't have any choice. He has to vote for the Communist Party, which is the only one on the ballot.
We have freedom of speech and a free press.
Communist newspapers and radio are all controlled, and they don't dare say anything against the Communist Party.
Under communism, the teachers can only teach what conforms to the communist ideology, while we have freedom to learn all sides of the question.
Is this the kind of rigid, slanted teaching we want for our children? Or do we want our children to know how to get at the facts and think for themselves? From the very first grades, teachers try to give students a respect for truth, a feeling that they are free to ask questions, to speak their thoughts. Our young people have the same rights and freedom of thought that all of us enjoy, rights passed on to us by our forefathers. My own class studies this heritage firsthand on visits to the nation's capital. They learn that the men who signed the Declaration of Independence risked lives and fortune that we might fear no tyrant. They learn that the victories of freedom were not easily won. With this understanding, they too can swear upon the altar of Almighty God eternal hostility to all forms of tyranny over the mind of man. This is our problem today. We are still fighting tyranny over the mind of man. How many of my senior boys will be wearing uniforms soon to defend these truths? I will not be the one to fence in, to restrict their free minds learning to get at the facts, to analyze and make intelligent decisions and then take constructive action. Free minds, unprejudiced and unafraid, are the best tools we have to build a better, freer world. Free minds are the best weapons we have with which to defend it. No, I will not be the one to starve and stunt these minds, to rob them of their birthright of freedom, guaranteed them by their country. Still, despite all fears and pressures, the freest country in the world. I think I've said all I can say.
Thank you, Mrs. Aron.
The school board's meeting late tonight. There's something about a communist teacher, I hear.
Well, something about a teacher. Even Jimmy, sitting there chairing that meeting tonight. I almost called him Jimmy. Surely he knows me better than to think. No, I'll not be the one to erase it.